I get it, you scrolling through a sea of welding machines, each one promising professional power and commercial-grade durability, but every time you actually plug one in, the dial feels off, the arc sputters, and you end up wondering if you just wasted money on a piece of metal that looks good on paper. That hesitation is real, and the last thing you want is to bring a welder home, set it up, and discover it can't handle the job you bought it for. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review I'm going to walk through exactly what the Everlast CYCLONE 312i delivers in a typical garage or small shop environment, where the value actually lives, and who should walk away before they hit add to cart. First, let's talk about the kind of work this machine is built for. The CYCLONE 312i is a 315 dual voltage 220V or 240V MIG and stick welder aimed at the serious hobbyist or the small business owner who needs a machine that can move between thin-sheet aluminum and heavier steel without swapping gear. It's not a tabletop hobby unit, but it also isn't a full-size industrial torch you'd see on a shipyard. The sweet spot is a workshop that does occasional automotive frame repair, custom metal art, or light fabrication places where you need enough power to run a 12-inch spool, but you don't have a 3-phase line or a dedicated weld shop. One of the first things you notice when you power it up is the 4.3-inch TFT LCD. It's bright enough to read in a dim garage, and the layout groups the MIG, stick, and rod type settings logically. The screen isn't a gimmick. It actually saves you time when you switch between an E6010 rod and a standard MIG wire, because the rod setting button lets you select the rod type, and the machine automatically tweaks the start voltage and waveform. For someone who isn't a welding engineer, that means less guesswork and fewer burnt rods. I tested it by welding a 1/8-inch mild steel plate with an E6010 rod, and then switched to a 0.030-inch MIG wire on the same piece. The transition was smooth, no need to power down, no fiddling with multiple dials. The PowerSet function is another practical convenience. In theory, it's a one-button way to let the welder find the optimal parameters for the thickness you're feeding. In practice, I found it most useful when I was doing quick repairs on a backyard fence. I set the material thickness, hit PowerSet, and the machine adjusted the voltage and wire feed speed. It saved me the mental math of what's the right voltage for inch steel, and delivered a stable arc within a few seconds. That speed can be a real productivity boost when you're juggling a few small jobs in a day. Now, let's be honest about the duty cycle. Everlast rates a 35% duty cycle at 315A and 60% at 250A. In plain language, that means if you're welding at the top end of the machine's capability, you'll need to pause roughly every 3 minutes to let it cool. For a hobbyist doing a weekend project, that's fine. For a small business that needs to run a continuous production line, you'll either need to step down the amperage or have a second machine on standby. I ran a test welding an inch steel plate at 300A and found the unit warmed up quickly. After about 3 minutes the temperature warning light came on, and I had to let it rest for a minute before resuming. It's a trade-off you have to factor in. The machine gives you high amperage for short bursts, not marathon sessions. Another practical consideration is the power source. The CYCLONE 312i runs on a single-phase 240V outlet with a NEMA 650 plug. If your shop already has a 240V circuit for a dryer or an air compressor, you can plug it in directly. If you're limited to a standard 120V household outlet, you'll need a step-up transformer, which adds cost and bulk. I found the plug to be robust and the cord thick enough to handle the current without feeling flimsy, but you do have to plan your workshop layout around that plug type. Spool handling is where the Everlast design shows its commercial-grade intentions. The machine comes with a 12-inch spool holder, which is generous compared to many entry-level welders that only accept 8-inch spools. If you're welding a lot of thin-wall tubing, that extra wire length reduces the number of spool changes. The optional 8-inch adapter is handy if you have leftover smaller spools, but the primary holder is sturdy and swivels smoothly, which matters when you're moving the welder around a busy shop floor. On the downside, the weight is notable. At roughly 70 pounds, it's not something you'll want to carry up a flight of stairs. The built-in handle helps, but you'll likely need a dolly or a dedicated bench to move it regularly. Also, while the LCD is clear, the menu navigation can feel a bit nested. You have to scroll through several screens to get to the advanced